When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Aloe or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling, and for shoppers, buying, simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does online business better than Shopify. It's home of Shop Pay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/income.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
This podcast contains adult themes and language, and some of the things that we discuss may be disturbing to some listeners. In this podcast, we discuss sexual assault, torture, race, and murder. Listener discretion is advised. Please take care of yourself.
Episode 232. Buiti Binafi, which is Garifuna for good morning, welcome, and bienvenidos bitches, which is Spanish for bienvenidos bitches. And thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, Fruitloops is a podcast about true crimes committed by people of color and those who are othered and the victims, because contrary to popular belief, not all serial killers are... they're not all, straight, cisgender, white dudes.
What?
No, yeah. I mean, I'm as shocked as you are. That's right, though. These crimes rarely get any public attention because the news is... how do I say this? The news is racist. Allegedly.
And we are Wendy and Beth. She's Wendy, a Black Latinx woman. And I'm Beth, and I just happen to be white.
That's right. It's just a part of who we are.
Yeah, but we're not journalists, investigators, or psychologists.
None
just
of
a
those.
Couple of gals interested in true crime. Also, the opinions expressed in this podcast are just that, our opinions.
All right, my friends. So who are we talking about today?
Well, today we're talking about Robert Lee Parker, a Black man who was convicted of the murders of 2 women who lived on the same cul-de-sac in Shoreline, Washington. After he murdered them, he set their apartments on fire in a futile attempt to destroy evidence.
Yeah, but he lived in the same cul-de-sac as him. Also, cul-de-sac invokes ideals of peace, harmony,
yeah, like
wonderful
Desperate
life.
Housewives.
Yeah, nothing bad happens in a cul-de-sac.
Yeah, except it does.
Except, yes. So before we get into it, how you doing?
Well, I'm alive.
Yes. Okay. Great to start. Great start. Mm-hmm.
That's all I got.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I'm surviving.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And on that note, I wanted to mention to the Fruities that we will be taking a break in June. So we'll have some content for you to listen to.
Absolutely.
But we won't have any new episodes for you until July.
That's right. That's right. We need our breaks.
Yep.
So we can come back rejuvenated, recharged, and ready to take down this
the
true crime.
patriarchy
Yeah,
and
the patriarchy and racism. All of it.
Yeah.
All of it. We're getting all of it. But we, we hope that you'll take a page out of our book, and we encourage you all to take naps, take breaks, chill, all the things you need to, just like we do, to rest, fortify yourself, and repeat.
Yes.
And did you know Mother's Day is this weekend?
I did know that. It's not my favorite holiday, so.
Oh, it just sneaks up on me. Yeah. And then I'm like, why is everybody being so nice to me today? It's Mother's Day, and I gotta get it together for my own mother. So happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. Now let's get into some listener letters, shall we?
Okay.
Well,
hello, angels. Thank you.
Look at that. What's in that beautiful bag, Beth?
Well, I wanted to say thank you to Echo Athletics and Laura, who posted on our YouTube channel.
Yeah, hip-hop air horns for you all.
Yeah.
We are so grateful.
Yeah, thank you so much for your kind words.
Yeah, they really made our day.
Yes, they did. And if you have any questions or comments, please send them to fruitloopspod@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail at
602-935-6294.
And we may feature it on a future episode. But you know what? If you don't want us to, we won't do it. Just let us know.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now, we have no new Patreons this week,
Aww.
but we recently had our video club with the existing Patreons.
It was super fun.
Everybody was welcome. It was a lot of fun. Just shout out to all the Fruities who could make it. Shout out to the Fruities who wanted to but couldn't. The recording will drop eventually. And we just appreciate all of our Fruities so much. So just to recap, if you are interested, like, should I be a Patreon? You do get bonus episodes, commercial free. You get merch, and we do a meetup, a happy hour every month.
Or we try to every month. Every once in a while it falls through, but
because life be life. Am I right? So that's that on that. Let's take a quick break and get into the story when we come back.
I want to take a moment to tell you about my podcast, Carol Costello Presents Blind Rage. In 1984, a woman named Phyllis Cottle was abducted in broad daylight, tortured, and left to die in a burning car in Akron, Ohio. At the time, I was a rookie reporter covering this horrific story. Since then, I've reported every kind of crime imaginable. I've been able to leave most of them at work, but not this one, the one that buried itself under my skin and stayed put. Phyllis Cottle was a badass woman, and I want to tell you her story. A production of Evergreen Podcasts and signature title of the Killer Podcast Network, you can find Carol Costello Presents Blind Rage wherever you get your podcasts. Discover more great true crime and paranormal programming at killerpodcast.com.
This December, Christmas gets creepy with the Empty Coffin Podcast. This is host Greg Hansberry, and we are unwrapping the dark side of the holidays. This month, we revisit the haunting tragedy of a rock legend's final performance.
The band was on. They had just started their opening song. The killer walks across the stage, gun drawn.
We revive the forgotten tradition of telling ghost stories for Christmas.
There's this miserable, sour old man who spends all the time on his own in the graveyard, and the goblins take him.
And we sink our teeth into Nosferatu lore.
This story cropped up that the actor who played Nosferatu was so convincing that he was an actual vampire.
The Empty Coffin Podcast is part of the Evergreen Network. Subscribe on your favorite app and have yourself a scary little Christmas.
All right, we're back. Remind us, Beth, who is our subject today?
Our subject today is Robert Lee Parker, a black man who was convicted of the murders of two women who lived on the same cul-de-sac in Shoreline, Washington.
All right, so now we're going to move on to the love and light section of our show, where we name the victims and also wish love and light to their loved ones, friends, family members, co-workers, and community members who suffered through the loss of these two individuals and are still dealing with it. So just want to say rest in power to Renee Powell, who was 43 years old, and also rest in power to Barbara Walsh, who was 54. Now, let's get into the setting. Take us there, Beth.
Well, the setting is Shoreline, Washington. Shoreline is a suburb of Seattle, located approximately 9 miles north of downtown Seattle, and wedged between the Puget Sound to the west and Lake Washington to the east.
The name of Seattle actually comes from Chief Sealth. Sealth was an anglicization of his name in his native Lushootseed language. Seattle is the only major city named after a native chief. Chief Sealth was the leader of both the Squamish and Duwamish peoples. It is the Duwamish lands that currently make up metropolitan Seattle.
The United States is a young country, and Washington is a young state. White settlers first came to the Seattle area in 1851. The development of Seattle included the attempted eradication of indigenous people and their history, and the oppression of anyone who was not white or Christian.
So just a quick culture corner. Should we talk about structural racism?
Let's do it.
Mother, may I? So structural racism refers to the totality of ways that society allows for or fosters racial discrimination by reinforcing systems like housing, education, employment, and laws written and laws that are unwritten that harm people of color and LGBTQ people and also poor people. And even though you may not have a sheet over your head or a badge on your chest, there are ways in which all members of society or community contribute to the harm of others. And in Seattle, growth and prosperity was intentional for property-owning Christian white men. And everyone else, it was like, to hell with them. So,
yeah. Not good.
No.
In the Northwest in the 1880s, speculators planned towns in anticipation of the Transcontinental Railroad route. Among these was Richmond Beach, which today is a neighborhood in Shoreline. The arrival of the Great Northern Railroad in Richmond Beach in 1891 spurred the growth of the small town and increased the pace of development in the wooded uplands.
Construction of the Seattle-Everett interurban line through Shoreline in 1906 and the paving of the North Trunk Road in 1913 made travel to and from Shoreline easier, which increased suburban growth. People could live on a large lot, raise much of their own food, and still be able to take the interurban train or, beginning in 1914, the bus, the autobus, to work or school in Seattle.
That sounds pretty nice, actually.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah. And I will say, Seattle, I think public transportation-wise is pretty good.
Pretty good?
As far as big cities and walkability and, being able to get around places, I think Seattle's doing pretty good.
Nice.
Yeah.
During the early 20th century, Shoreline attracted large developments drawn by its rural yet accessible location. Commercial centers formed around the interurban stops. The Great Depression and World War II, between 1930 and 1945, slowed the pace of housing development.
During the Depression, many Shoreline families eked out a living on land they had purchased in better times. During World War II, building materials were rationed and private housing construction virtually stopped.
But with the end of the war came a tremendous demand for family housing. Seattle's Black population increased dramatically as well. The late 1940s saw large housing developments spring up seemingly overnight.
There are a lot of Black people in Seattle.
Now there are.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
And when I was growing up, there were. I went to high school in Spokane, and so I always loved going to Seattle because I would see more Black people
Than you'd seen in
around
your life.
than I would see. Yeah, seriously. I mean, in Spokane, the only Black people I saw were in
Your
the
family.
mirror. Yeah. So for most of its history, Seattle and its environs were sharply segregated. People of color were excluded from most jobs, most neighborhoods and schools, and many stores, restaurants, hotels, and other commercial establishments, even hospitals. Which is fucking wild because
That's
Black people's
awful.
money is green.
Yeah,
So
hello.
what do you guys want to go out of business? What the fuck?
As in other Western states, the system of severe racial discrimination in Seattle targeted not just Black people, but also Native Americans, Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, people of Mexican ancestry, and also, at times, Jewish people.
Shoreline itself has a history of racial exclusion, with many suburbs in King County, including Shoreline, explicitly excluding people of color in the 1910s to the 1960s. In 1959, Edwin T. Pratt and his family became the first Black family to move to Shoreline. The Shore!
Pratt was a civil rights leader in Seattle who worked to desegregate public schools and create equal housing opportunities. But on January 26, 1969, Pratt was assassinated outside of his home in Shoreline, and the case remains unsolved.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That happened to a lot of Black leaders who were making
the 60s,
change in the 60s. Interesting how those who, throughout history, Jesus, Martin Luther King Jr., Medgar Evers, and Pratt, they were fighting for the people. And only after the fact, after time has passed, and history corrects their reputation that they're seen as good people after they were assassinated for doing the right thing.
It's so wild to me how, hindsight is 2020.
Yeah. I mean, who else was? I'm trying to think of another famous assassination. Lincoln was assassinated because he was gonna ended slavery.
Right.
And people doing good things die.
Yeah.
Ew.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. So by the late 1940s, business leaders and residents began to see Shoreline as a unified region rather than scattered settlements concentrated at interurban stops and railroad accesses. And in 1944, the name Shoreline was used for the first time to describe the school district, and the area was referred to as the Shoreline District. Shoreline officially became a city in King County in 1995.
Seattle's population dropped between 1960 and 1990 with its major employer, Boeing. Boeing, you were talking about Boeing.
Whoa, Boeing!
Boeing!
That's right. Most people.
With the airplanes.
Yeah, now that I think of it, all the wealthy
Doors
people
coming
I
off.
went to high school with worked for
Parents
Boeing.
worked for Boeing. Yeah.
Yeah, but their planes, they got some splaining to do.
They got some explaining to do, yeah. So I guess Boeing downsized consistently starting in the 1960s to 1990. So, yeah, the population was dropping and people thought Seattle was dying.
No.
And in 1971, a billboard near the airport implored the last person to leave Seattle to turn out the lights.
Wow. Oh, it was that bad.
It was, apparently.
Oh,
yeah.
Poor Seattle.
I thought that was funny.
Oh, man. I think Seattle's a really cool city.
Yeah.
I hate the Pacific Northwest. If the Pacific Northwest was a person and it was in my house, I'd punch it in the face. But I do
But you love Seattle.
like Seattle. Yeah. But by the 1990s, Seattle was one of the fastest growing cities in the country, as it saw the founding of Amazon, the rise of Microsoft, because Bill Gates lived there, and a thriving grunge music scene. That's right. I forgot about that. Kurt Cobain and Pearl
All
Jam.
that stuff.
So suddenly the world knew where to find Seattle on a map. Whoa! And lots of people started moving there.
Yeah, I don't think I ever heard of Seattle until the grunge
The 90s,
music scene. Yeah.
I had not heard of it till I moved to the damn state, girl.
Right,
So, yeah. See who? Okay.
So Shoreline has become increasingly diverse, but in the 1990s, it was majority white. Since it didn't become a city until 1995, it did not make the 1990 census, but in 2000, the makeup was 77% white and 3% Black, the rest being Native American, Asian, Pacific Island, and other. It was probably of an even higher white percentage in the 90s.
Yeah. So now let's get into the early life of our perp today, Robert Lee Parker. Robert Lee Parker, a.k.a. Robert White, was born in approximately 1972 in Arkansas. We could not find anything about his early life. What we do know is that in 1991, he was sentenced to 8 years in an Arkansas prison for burglary and theft and served nearly 2 years. And from 1990 to 1993, he was charged with aggravated assault, burglary, theft, auto theft, and aggravated robbery in Arkansas. So now we're going to get into the timeline. Take us there, Beth.
In 1995, Robert Parker had moved to Shoreline, Washington, and was living with his girlfriend, Princess Gray, who was pregnant with their child. Parker made money through selling drugs,
selling drugs,
and pawning stolen property. He would often go out alone at night for long periods of time without explanation.
This reminds me of many perps that we've covered in the past, that their wives were like, oh, he would just go out at night.
Yeah.
The baseline killer comes to mind.
Yeah.
So the couple lived in a duplex being rented by Princess. It was located behind an apartment complex on a cul-de-sac in a neighborhood in Shoreline known as Ballinger Terrace. Ballinger Terrace did not experience many murders. In the previous year, there had been only one.
On February 24th, 1995, just before midnight, the Shoreline Fire Department responded to a report of a fire in a ground floor apartment at the apartment complex on the cul-de-sac. After firefighters put out the fire, they discovered the body of Renee Powell, a 43-year-old single white woman.
2 years earlier, Renee, a registered nurse, had visited Seattle on vacation from her hometown of St. Louis, and she never left. Renee was gay. She had lived as a closeted lesbian for most of her life, but in Shoreline, she finally felt free to be herself.
Which is wonderful. It's just sad that she only got to be herself
Found freedom,
for such a short time.
Yeah, I agree.
I watched a show, I can't remember which one it was, Forensic Files or another one.
Mm-hmm.
And they were talking to one of her family members, and they were like, yeah, she was so happy.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
You know what, though? I am glad she got to be free and happy, even if it was just for a moment. Yeah.
Renee's body was found lying face down on the floor of her bedroom with a bookshelf pulled down and lying on top of her. Her left arm was bound with an electrical cord cut from a lamp in her bedroom. She had been gagged with a piece of lingerie, and most of her clothes had been torn off.
She had been stabbed twice, once in the abdomen and once in the back. An ice pick was found near her leg, and a knife was found on a table in the hallway. 2 fires had been set. The first fire was started in the master bedroom near Renee's body, and combustible material had been placed between her legs. The second was started in the living room next to the fireplace.
So when they were talking about these fires on Forensic Files or whatever it was, they were saying that these fires did not communicate with each other, which I thought was a really interesting way of saying that they were set separately.
Yeah. No, I mean, when you hear that, I'm not familiar with the lingo, but that makes total sense in my brain. Yeah.
It appeared as though she had been doing laundry at the time she was attacked. The detectives were able to determine that the killer had stolen items from the apartment, including a raincoat, a dress, a video cassette recorder, several bottles of wine, a duffel bag, and some frozen meat.
Not the frozen meat?
Yep.
What?
He even took the frozen meat.
He went in the fridge. I mean, a violation to say the least. So the medical examiner concluded Renee died before the fires were set, and that she had died from strangulation and from loss of blood from the stab wounds. She had also been sexually assaulted. Vaginal swabs taken from her body were sent for DNA testing.
30 days after the murder of Renee Powell, on March 26th, firefighters responded to another fire in a ground floor apartment located 50 feet away and on the same cul-de-sac as Renee Powell's apartment. After they put out the fire, firefighters discovered the body of Barbara Walsh.
"3 AM, the comedy horror podcast that holds weekly gatherings around the campfire. Let me tell you what you're going to get. You're going to hear stories about demonic possessions, prison stabbings, skinwalkers, glitches in the Matrix, cult leaders, missing 411, night marchers, Operation Paperclip, Mesopotamian devil worship, and so many monsters it'll give Kanye West a runaway for his money. Pop and meme culture also aren't off topic. A camp where laughs and scares are constantly competing for first place. We're just a group of friends, trying to bust each other's balls, find the best stories, and expand the circle in the process. 3 AM, the comedy horror podcast, not for the faint or fragile of heart. Let's go.
Hi, I'm Sean McCabe.
And I'm Carrie McCabe.
We are, well, married, obviously, but we're also obsessed with the darker side of things.
True crime stories, alien abductions, poltergeists. If it leaves you scratching your head and keeping those lights on at night, we want to hear about it.
That's why we host the podcast, Ain't It Scary, with Sean and Carrie.
Every week, we bring our listeners a true story guaranteed to send chills down your spine. From history's most brutal serial killers to the mystery of spontaneous human combustion.
Yep, lots of these stories leave unanswered questions behind, and you'll get to poke through the rubble of the evidence with a hardened skeptic and
someone whose mind is more open to fun.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
You can find Ain't It Scary with Sean and Carrie wherever you get your podcasts, and on social media at Ain't It Scary. Come play with us.
Two fires in one cul-de-sac.
Ground floor apartments.
Yeah. Come on. So Barbara was a single 53-year-old white woman who also worked in the healthcare industry as a receptionist at a local hospital. She had been widowed for over 20 years and never remarried. She was described as very generous and willing to help anybody.
At about 10:30 p.m., a neighbor had seen Barbara returning from the laundry room of their apartment complex. She was never seen alive again. Barbara was found face down, and clothing had been packed all around her body and between her legs.
As with Renee, her clothes had been torn off and her left wrist had been tied with a lamp cord. She had been gagged with pairs of tights and stabbed 4 times in her abdomen. But in this case, 7 different fires had been set in her apartment.
Wow.
Yeah. One had been set in the clothing packed around her body.
A condom wrapper was found in the bathroom along with 2 used towels on the bathroom counter. The towels were collected as evidence. Much later, a pubic hair was found inside one of the singed towels and was sent for DNA testing.
The medical examiner concluded Barbara Walsh died before the fires were set and that she had died from strangulation and asphyxiation. Vaginal bruising indicated a sexual assault.
The detectives were able to determine that a television, a VCR, a CD player, and stereo speakers were missing from Barbara's apartment. Among other missing items were some wicker baskets, a box of silverware, some Raggedy Ann and Andy figurines, 2 miniature red wire old-fashioned bicycles, and a glass prism.
The similarities between the 2 victims was striking. They were both single women who worked in the healthcare industry, lived in the first 4 apartments, and both had been doing their laundry on the days of their murders.
Both victims had been stabbed, strangled, sexually assaulted, and burglarized. Both had been bound using undergarments and cords cut from electrical devices. And at both crime scenes, the perpetrator had removed the smoke detectors and doorbells before setting multiple fires.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm not sure why he removed the doorbells.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah.
I mean, have you ever had a doorbell go out in your house and trying to fix it?
No.
Like, it's mind-boggling. It's the steps are endless. There's wires. That is so much work.
Yeah.
I just don't understand. Just don't kill anybody, Robert Lee Parker.
Yeah, just don't do it.
You could try that. So police came to the obvious conclusion that the perpetrator was the same in both crimes. Way to go, guys. And it was surmised that he had been watching the women. And when they left their doors unlocked to go down to the laundry room, the perp went in, possibly waiting and hiding in their apartments for them to return and then attack them. Horrifying.
Yeah.
So let's get into the investigation and the arrest. What do you got for us, Beth?
The duplex where Parker was living with his girlfriend was located right behind the cul-de-sac where Renee Powell and Barbara Walsh had lived. It was approximately 130 feet from Renee's apartment and 150 feet from Barbara's apartment.
King County detectives went door to door and talked to the residents in the vicinity to gather information about the crimes. One of the doors was answered by Princess Gray, who insisted that she was home alone. But the detective could plainly see a man sitting in a chair inside the home.
When the detective asked to speak with him, Princess still claimed to be alone. Okay, Princess.
Well, I mean, he didn't say, do you mean figuratively or literally? Please explain.
An argument ensued, but then the man went ahead and came to the door. He told police that his name was Robert White. Police questioned him as they had been questioning everyone in the neighborhood. They did think that the exchange was odd because of the whole denying that there was anybody home.
Yeah, he all of a sudden became visible after being invisible. What the
But,
fuck?
I was thinking they're a black couple. And, it could have been explained by, I don't trust the police.
Absolutely. Oh my God. Can we get a round of applause for this lady? Or a hip hop air horn? Oh my God. Who are you? Wow.
Who am I?
You did it. Oh my God. Yes. Beth, I am ashamed to say in this moment that I hadn't thought about that. And you, being the OG of true crime, everlasting knowledge and learning. Oh my God. I just, thank you. Thank you so much. I can't do this without you. You want to just take the rest of the script?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right. Well,
so they did think the exchange was odd, but he wasn't a suspect at the time.
Okay. So instead, police were looking at another man who lived nearby and who had been writing poetry about stabbing women and having sex with them as they died. Well, it's
poetry.
art, right? It's art. It's art. It's art. You are an artist, right?
It's
and I
very weird art, but okay, it's art. Yeah.
I mean, people thought it was weird when Frida Kahlo did paintings about her period and her body being impaled by a bus accident. But it's art, right? So not for everybody necessarily, but it's art, and generally it's harmless. So the police were looking at this guy who was an artist with art they deemed troubling. And this person also seemed obsessed with older women. But when investigators collected a discarded cigarette from this man, the DNA did not match. And I love it when DNA does what it's supposed to do.
Its thing.
Exclude people and identifies people.
Yep.
Way to go, DNA. You did it. You did it. Congratulations, DNA.
Police also asked the public for help, and within a few days, they received over 600 tips. However, none of them led to Robert Parker.
So then, in April 1995, Parker was arrested in Linwood, Washington, for a drug offense, and he served 83 days in jail. Princess moved out of the duplex that June while he was still in jail, and in July of 1995, Parker was extradited to Arkansas on a fugitive warrant.
Yeah, so I think that he had a warrant out for his arrest in Arkansas when he moved to Shoreline. And he was using that name Robert White to try to get away.
Fly under the radar.
Yeah, fly under the radar.
Yeah.
And then when he was arrested and went to jail, then they figured out who he was. And then once he was done with jail in Washington, they sent him to Arkansas to serve his time.
Another thing I think we should point out is 1995, DNA was new.
Yes.
And so, I will say that criminals can be very smart and clever people. And maybe it was, at one point in time, smart and clever to use different names.
Yeah.
But with DNA, it doesn't work.
No.
And that's that.
But I have to say he was kind of smart, I think.
Yeah, I definitely am sensing clever.
Yeah.
But also, I'll get into what my takeaways, but succumb to his, vices. And,
faux show.
Yeah.
So in November of 1995, DNA profiles came back which confirmed that the perpetrator in the murders of both Renee Powell and Barbara Walsh was one and the same. But the DNA profile had not yet been linked to Parker.
Parker was released from jail in Arkansas in May of 1996, and he eventually returned to the Seattle area. In the meantime, police were looking into another arson case. This one in Tifton, Georgia, where a 40-year-old single woman had been found stabbed, bound, and raped in her burned home.
Prior to her murder, the woman had been doing laundry in a laundry room attached to her home, and a TV was missing. Another man became a suspect in that woman's murder, but he was also eliminated by DNA. And I tried to Google to figure out who this woman was and find the story, what happened. I couldn't find anything definitively, but I think I found it.
Okay.
I just don't know for sure, so I'm not going to tell the story.
That's fair.
I
That's
don't know
fair.
for sure. But I think it was solved and another man was convicted for it using DNA. But
okay, so
like
Robert Lee Parker wasn't pinned to this murder, but it is eerily similar.
Yes, and they thought,
in terms of facts.
For a time, they thought that it was part of the string of murders.
Well, I don't think I'm ever going to fault police for thinking theories.
For investigating.
For investigating
That's their
stuff.
job.
Yeah, it kind of is. Thanks, Fred. So after Parker returned to Seattle, he began living with a new girlfriend, this time Sharon Bell. This pissed off Princess Gray. And in August of 1996, while at an unemployment office, Princess saw Parker and Sharon together, and she attacked them. They had it coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't find the details about this attack. I would have loved to know.
Oh, man.
What happened.
Can you imagine if smartphones had been around? We would have known so much more.
We would have seen all the video.
Yeah. And I just, my mantra is don't air your dirty laundry out. Like, if you're going to fight, do it at home.
Yeah,
don't do it in public.
Don't do it at the unemployment office.
Yeah, exactly.
So Princess was charged and subsequently found guilty of the assault on Parker and Sharon. She also had an additional pending assault charge based on an incident during a court hearing on the first assault charge, in which she hit Parker.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. Princess is a little extra.
Princess, she's like a woman after my own heart. Like, we did an episode and you were like, oh, she's an old lady who really liked art or something. But this princess is more my speed. So while the assault charges were pending, Princess told her therapist that Parker was involved in the murders of Renee Powell and Barbara Walsh. She told the therapist that Parker should, quote, quit cheating on her, unquote, or she would disclose that he had killed these women. The therapist reported Princess's statements to the police on October 29th, 1996. They have to do that.
Yeah, she's a mandated reporter.
Right.
Oh, I guess we should say, that means that if you tell the therapist that you're going to hurt somebody or you're
going to hurt somebody, or if you are in danger of harm or somebody else is in danger of harm, mandatory reporters like teachers and therapists and doctors have to report to law enforcement.
Yep.
They don't get a choice.
Yeah.
And that, there's all kinds of issues with that. Yeah.
Police met with Princess Gray in November of 1996 at the King County Jail, where she was serving her sentence for the assault on Parker and Sharon. Princess told the detectives that Parker lived with her at the time of the murders.
She disclosed to police that Robert Parker was the Robert White who had been at her house when Princess had claimed to be alone. She told them that he often used that name as an alias. She also told detectives that after the murders, Parker had sprinkled pepper inside and outside their duplex with the idea that pepper would throw off the scent for any police dogs searching the area. And that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if it works, but it's
I don't know if it works.
Kind of clever. Yeah.
It is. And I feel like I've heard that throughout like slave escape stories is that throwing things out so that the hounds
dogs
don't fact check me on this, but I believe I've heard stories of this, and maybe this is where Parker got this idea.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. She also described property that Parker had brought into her apartment on the nights of the murders and told them that she still had that property.
Oh.
She said he brought home VCRs and televisions, which that didn't interest the police too much since that had been on the news. And, you know, one TV is kind of like every other TV.
Yeah.
But
a TV.
Yeah.
Show me something exciting.
But the trinkets and knickknacks interested them more because they're more personal.
Certainly. So because the detectives agreed to arrange for Princess's release and not to prosecute her for possession of stolen property or on the additional assault charge on Parker, Princess agreed to turn over to detectives items Parker had brought into her duplex on the nights of the murders.
The items included a London fog raincoat, a box of silverware, wicker baskets, a glass prism, 2 wire sculptures of bicycles, and Raggedy Ann and Andy figurines. Detectives showed these items to the friends and family of Renee Powell and Barbara Walsh.
The London fog raincoat was identified as Renee's. Her family remembered when she bought it because it was one of the first purchases she made when she moved to the Seattle area. The other items were identified as Barbara's.
And on November 5th, 1996, Parker was arrested as he arrived at Toys R Us in Northgate, where he worked as a stocking assistant.
Got him. Oh, man.
According to detectives, he came across as soft-spoken and he denied any involvement.
On the morning of August 1st, 1966, shots ring out from the observation deck of the clock tower on the University of Texas campus. It marks the infamous beginning of the modern era of mass shootings in America.
You're listening to Stop the Killing podcast. Join us as we take you behind the crime scene tape to explain global mass shootings and mass attacks. I'm Sarah Ferris, but more importantly, this is Catherine Schweit, the former head of the FBI's active shooter program.
I spent 5 years as the FBI's top executive looking for answers to the mass shooting crisis. I've been at the shooting scenes, I've traced heroic acts of bravery, and I've sat silently and listened to the heart-wrenching stories from survivors.
Amongst this horror, there is hope. We all hold the key to stop the killing. You just need to know how to unlock the door. Download Stop the Killing and be part of the solution. Search Stop the Killing on Apple, Spotify, and all the usual suspects.
So Parker told the detectives that he had lived with Princess Gray from November 94 through April 95. And he recognized the victim's property because he said it had been in Princess Gray's duplex when he first moved in with her. It was already there, officer.
Yeah.
And he denied any involvement with the murders and insisted that he had not brought the items into the home. Scout's honor.
Yeah. Scout's honor. A sample of Parker's blood was taken for DNA testing. That same day when a search warrant was executed, the police recovered from Parker's apartment a large black duffel bag with purple handles. Renee Powell's sister-in-law later identified this bag as one that she gave to Renee for Christmas.
DNA testing and the analysis of Parker's blood sample was finished on November 6, 1996. They matched. Parker was charged with 2 counts of first-degree aggravated murder on November 8, 1996. I'm sorry, I can't not do this because of DNA. Every time.
After the charges were filed, Princess Gray called Parker's mother, Blanche Parker, and her own mother, Dolores Gray, and recanted the statements that she had made to the detectives. She claimed that she had actually found all of the property near her garbage cans after the second murder, and that she had lied to detectives because she was angry with Parker.
Interesting. I'm guessing that some people listening to this might be like, why would she lie to the police? They're there to help. But she's a black woman in America. Yeah. And that's not her experience.
Don't trust the police.
Yeah. So now let's get into the trial. So in January of 1997, a fellow inmate named Michael Chadwick claimed that Parker told him that he was in jail because he had committed a couple of homicides. Just a couple, not too many. And according to Chadwick, Parker wanted him to say that they were together around the end of February 1995.
In exchange for Chadwick's agreement to testify on the state's behalf, the prosecutor agreed to make a favorable sentencing recommendation for his pending case. Parker denied having this conversation with Chadwick.
In the next 2 years, over 50 pretrial hearings were held in preparation for this trial. The trial finally commenced on November 30th, 1998, and concluded on February 17th, 1999.
Chadwick testified that Parker asked him for help in providing an alibi, but much of the testimony and evidence presented during the trial centered around DNA evidence and the testimony of Princess Gray, who at first implicated him in the slayings but then recanted.
Prosecutors stressed to the jury the reliability of the DNA evidence, and remember, this was new science at the time.
Yeah.
While the defense team pointed to the unreliability of Gray's statements.
The defense also told jurors that the DNA match was inaccurate, and the hair was discovered more than a year after Barbara Walsh's murder, and roughly 2 weeks after Parker's King County jail cell was searched for contraband. So if the hair don't fit, you must acquit.
You must acquit. That's what my God, Johnny Cochran said. Yes, yeah. Amen. Thank you so much. And the jurors who listened to almost 3 months of testimony deliberated for 4 days before reaching a verdict, finding Parker guilty of 2 counts of aggravated first-degree murder.
Parker, who was 27 at the time, sat quietly in the packed courtroom as the court clerk read the verdict. Relatives and friends of Renee Powell and Barbara Walsh hugged each other and wept softly. Outside the courtroom, Parker's mother sobbed, saying repeatedly, quote, oh God, I can't take him home. I can't take him home," unquote.
The jury did not find that the death penalty should be imposed, and Parker was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But it's Washington, right? So
right.
It would be unusual for a liberal state to impose a death penalty. Yeah.
Robin Stratton, a niece of Barbara Walsh's, said, quote, celebrating someone getting the death penalty is not what our family is all about.
Mm-hmm.
But we're glad he was convicted and that he will spend the rest of his life in prison, unquote.
So now we're going to get into where are they now? So today, Parker is 52 years old and is housed in Stafford Creek Correctional Facility in Washington State. And Princess Gray died in 2011, unfortunately, at the age of 46.
That's sad.
And we're not sure what happened to her child. We just couldn't find anything. So
yeah.
Now let's get into what made Parker snap and our thoughts and takeaways. What do you got, Beth?
Well, since I could find nothing about his early life, I have no idea what his childhood was like or what from his childhood may have influenced him.
Right.
But he was obviously very angry for whatever reason.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
It was surmised by some investigators that he had murdered these women after he had fights with Princess Gray.
Oh.
And that relationship did seem like it was pretty volatile.
Kind of toxic.
Yeah. Some people also suspected that there were other murders in Arkansas.
Yeah.
Or that he did the murder in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, there's nothing concrete out there that connects him to any other crimes.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting and unusual if these were the only murders that he committed, like 2 murders almost exactly the same and then nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he was a convict. And so he couldn't really get a regular job because if you disclose you're a convict, so he kind of almost had no choice. No, I shouldn't say that.
As not the murder, but as far as like selling drugs.
Gainfully employed. Yeah.
Selling stolen merchandise and stuff like that.
Yeah.
He had a job at Toys R Us, but you can't make money at a job at Toys R Us.
I don't know how you could sustain adequate shelter, food, health care, etc. with a salary on Toys R Us.
Yeah.
But I would love to be wrong, but I don't know how that's possible. But I only bring that up because he sort of was inadvertently put into a position where he couldn't really earn money in an upstanding citizen kind of way. And that led to theft, robbery, and those things escalate sometimes to murder. Right,
but I don't think these murders were for theft, for burglary. I think there was more to it than that.
Okay.
Yeah, otherwise, he could have gone in there and stolen stuff while they were in the laundry room and then left. Yeah,
you're right.
And just the nature of the crimes. I mean, the women were sexually assaulted and then left in kind of degrading positions.
Right.
Yeah, typical serial killer stuff. So there was something more going on there. And why he chose these women, I'm not sure. But they were single, so he didn't have to worry about looking out for or subduing anyone else.
Yeah.
It is interesting that they were white, but
Yeah.
I think that may be because there were mostly white people in the
Proximity.
neighborhood. Yeah.
Right.
Right. Shoreline was majority white.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like he was just out there walking around the neighborhood and he saw these women and maybe watched them for a while.
Yeah.
They were older than him, so he may have considered them more vulnerable. Or maybe they were a stand-in for his mother if he had a bad relationship with her.
But we won't know.
No, we don't know. That's all just conjecture.
Yeah. Great points, Beth.
What are your thoughts?
I am kind of hung up on your, he was watching them.
Right.
But we still don't know why. And that's the unanswered question. But maybe you did just answer it when, you're filling in the holes, right? We don't know it for fact, but maybe something happened with his mother when he was a kid. And maybe
maybe his
weird
relationship with Princess kind of triggered something. I don't know.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting how both of the victims were healthcare workers.
Yeah.
But I think that, it has to do with proximity, right? If an employer is in town
nearby,
and an employer being a healthcare provider place, then it makes sense that employees live near there.
Yeah, like you knew a lot of people whose parents worked at Boeing.
Exactly.
Right.
Ding, ding, ding. And so I wanted to get into the violation of it all, how he violated these women's spaces and then their bodies and then their lives and then burning it all down, which doesn't really work as far as, getting away with murder or getting rid of all the evidence all the time. But perhaps in the mind of a killer like him, after he did the deed, like these things are compulsions, and sometimes compulsions have like a process. And if you don't finish the process, you're like stuck.
Yeah.
And so the deed, I think for him may have been the murder, and the conclusion or the wrapping it all up was the setting fire to it. And it was in this cul-de-sac, so he had an opportunity to watch it happen, right? Watch it burn away. And I think that maybe he didn't get full satisfaction of the acts that he committed until the fire began. So I don't know. I'm trying to be a pretend OG of true crime.
No, you're doing a good job. Keep it up.
Oh, thanks, friend. Okay. So also, I'm glad, Beth, that you researched this case and gave us some good information about the victims. I looked for them and looked for more articles about them in particular.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find any.
It was hard to find, for sure.
Yeah. Well, if Beth's on it, it's not impossible. So, and lastly, I just want to say, we all know true crime is true for somebody. So our hearts go out to the victims and to the loved ones in the community. So now let's get into how not to get murdered.
All right.
So if you love true crime and you don't want to die, here's a tip for you.
This segment is not intended to be victim blaming. We thought of this segment because I read somewhere that a lot of people listen to true crime because they want to know what they can do to be safer. This is not meant to blame the victims. It's just learning from other people's experiences.
So, Beth, OG of true crime, it sounds like you were inspired to give a tip. So what do you got?
Yes. So this story just reminded me to tell all y'all to lock everything all the time.
Yes, without exception.
Without
Do your
exception.
kids need to come inside? Who cares? Lock the door.
Lock your door even if you're only going to be away for a few minutes to do your laundry.
Exactly.
Yeah, lock your windows, even lock the inner door to your garage or basement.
Yeah.
This is something that I think a lot about.
Me too.
I'm not really sure why, but I'm always like double checking to make sure that's locked. Like one of my kids didn't go out there and forget to lock it again.
Oh, yeah.
And I just listened to a story where the perp got in through the garage. So they just pulled open the garage door.
Pulled it open?
Outside. Yeah.
Oh
there was like a little gap at the bottom of the garage door and they just pulled it up and went in. And actually, you know what? Now that I'm talking, I know why I think about it a lot.
Why?
Because my brother did that.
To your
house. Yeah.
No.
And my mom put bolts in the garage door, like in the where the wheels go.
Yeah.
So that the garage door wouldn't pull up.
Holy fuck.
Because he would do that.
Oh my God. But that just requires so much effort.
I know.
People will
so just
notice.
Lock your inner door. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. Beth, I'm terrified that because also this is not the only time I'm thinking Robert D'Angelo, was he the
Golden State
Gate? Yeah. That was one of the ways he got in is
right
when the garage door would open with the button. He would wait till it was almost closed and slip right in.
Roll in.
Yeah. And so thank you so much for this tip. It's also a really good reminder for all of us. So thank you, Beth.
You're welcome.
Now let's get into the shout out portion of our show where we shout out any content by or about people of color or LGBTQ folks or any true crime goodies.
All right.
I have a controversial content shout out.
Okay.
And it is the American Society of Magical Negroes.
Okay.
And it is a movie. It came out last summer and is now streaming on Peacock. And since I can't describe it well, let me just tell you what the internet said.
Okay.
So a young man gets recruited into a secret society of magical Black people who dedicate their lives to making white people's lives easier. Although initially enamored with his new powers, he begins to question the value of using supernatural means to do the very thing he's felt obligated to do his whole life. And it is so good.
Oh,
David Alan
awesome.
Grier is in it. Justice, I don't know what that kid's name is, but his name is Justice, and he was in Jurassic Park. He was in the Pokemon movie. He was in The Get Down on Netflix about hip hop. He is just an incredible, talented actor and artist. And Nicole Byer is in it. It's just really, really good. And it's really funny. It's satire. So
yeah.
That's what I was
had
afraid.
read about it, and I didn't watch it because the reviews were mixed.
They were
but
mixed.
I should have known it was mixed because white people's feelings were hurt.
Yes, exactly. It's definitely uncomfortable. I probably won't watch it with old Whitey because I think
really?
it might. Yeah, I think it might. He might not get the satire.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to watch it and look for podcasts about it and talk to the Fruities about it and talk to you about it.
Okay,
so,
I'm going to watch it.
Yeah. Let me know what you think. What do you got?
Well, I got a true crime goodie.
Okay.
I found this week. It's called Murder Homes.
What?
Yeah. And like you did, rather than describe it, I'm going to read their recap.
Okay.
So each week, Murder Homes tells the story of a single property. Who lived there? What secrets did they keep? And what did they leave behind? Part history, part murder mystery. This podcast mixes expert interviews, witness accounts, and court records to pull back the curtain on hidden stories each property has to tell. And one of the episodes is about the Hinterkaifeck murders.
Okay.
Which I've mentioned before is one of the, I think it was somebody asked, if I could have a murder mystery solved, which one would it be? And this is the one that I picked.
Really?
Yeah. So it's one of Germany's most infamous crimes. In the winter of 1922, the Gruber family's nerves were shattered by signs that someone had been watching them. Footsteps in the snow, strange noises in the attic, a broken lock on a barn door.
No.
And then on March 31st, 1922, all 6 were found viciously slaughtered with an axe.
Oh my good God Almighty.
Yeah.
Wow. Beth, I have subscribed and I mean what it's like I dare Wendy to listen to this. The last episode was about the ugly truth behind the jinx. What? I am so excited.
It's really good. Yeah.
Just to recap, that is the American Society of Magical Negroes on Peacock, as well as a podcast, a true crime goodie, Murder Homes Podcast. And I just subscribed.
Yay!
And oh my, that's the end of the show. But the good news is we will be back.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, where can the people find us, Beth?
Well, our website is fruitloopspod.com, and we use Fruitloops Pod for all of our social media. The footnotes for each episode can be found on our website. Plus, check it out for the different ways that you can support the show. Also, join us on Patreon, where we have literally hundreds of hours of bonus content. You can also support us by supporting our sponsors or by giving us a 5-star review.
5 stars only, please.
Also, don't forget to subscribe.
That's right. So listen up close. This is a weekly podcast, and new episodes drop every Thursday. So until next time, look alive, y'all. It's crazy out there. All right. Girl beauty. I almost didn't make it.
You know what I have, and you're going to be absolutely disgusted.
What is it?
Or at least
Tapioca
I think
tea?
most people would be absolutely disgusted. It's licorice tea.
No. Beth, you're fired from the show. Don't
I
ever
figured.
come back. Are you kidding
I
me?
assumed.
Listen, I don't think you can trust people who like
licorice.
Black licorice flavor. I think there's something off about people like that.
Yeah, I get accused of that all the time.
Now, is it black licorice flavor?
Yes.
Or like, oh, God.
Yes.
Oh, my. Wow.
So, yeah, I like black licorice. I also like Kalamata olives.
Do you also like killing babies?
No.
I mean, what else is there?
Really strong black coffee.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
I don't know. I like bitter flavors. Strong tastes. Yeah.
Do you like spicy food?
I love spicy food.
You know
Love
what?
it.
Now that I hear you say that, because Cat Williams went on Club Shay Shay. I don't know if you're familiar with Shannon Sharp.
Nope.
But he has a wildly popular interview show since he left The Skip and Shannon Sharp show where they talked about sports. And he interviewed Cat Williams and Cat Williams. Well, it was somebody else interviewing Cat Williams. Anyway, Cat Williams was like, they were like, why do Black people like such spicy, strong things? And Cat Williams' conclusion was that the Black palate requires strong flavors. And I know that you probably have some African ancestry deep down in there somewhere.
Yeah, it's got to be somewhere.
It's somewhere in there, and that
has to be.
explains your propensity for strong flavors, including offensive strong flavors like black licorice.
Woo! We did it!
We did it.
We
So
did it.
I'm going to get this audio in the drive, my friend. Go to sleep. Go to sleep now. Get some rest.
I will.
Who cares? It'll all get finished tomorrow or the
I'll
next
stop
day.
worrying.
Just get out of here.
Okay.
Put your head under the covers, on your pillow. Listen to something. Make sure you brush your teeth and wash your face, but just go.
Okay, sounds good.
Bye.
All right.
I love you.
I love
Bye.
you too. Bye.
24 hours ago, I found out the person I'd been dating and seeing for the last 6 months as a con man.
That is my sister Emma. Andrew Tonks's lies had been so convincing, she'd invested $300,000 with him. However, the tables were about to turn on Andrew. What he didn't know was that Emma had discovered his real identity. But to get any chance of justice, Emma had to act like it was business as usual. Coming up in this series,
And that's when murder, all this stuff goes through my mind. I'm really, really scared.
I'm assuming Sarah has watched too much Netflix and figures I've been defrauding you. Couldn't be further from the truth.
That's what this was, a real-life story that seems so unbelievable, but it was actually true.
a true story that all starts with one simple swipe to the right. I'm Sarah Ferris.
And I'm Emma Ferris, and this is my story, Conning the Con.
Is the pressure of your wedding day being perfect from sunrise to sunset weighing on your mind? Planning a wedding is stressful. But guess what? We are here to help. On the Bridezilla podcast, we celebrate love and help you plan your wedding day. We're all about keeping it real and having fun every step of the way. So whether you're just starting to plan or counting down the days, we're here to help you stay cool, calm, and collected. We have expert tips and amazing guests like wedding dress designer Haley Page. Let's get this party started and embrace your inner Bridezilla. Listen to Bridezilla wherever you get podcasts or visit us at thebridezilla.com.